I began this journey in a city that never really died. I am standing on a hill in Rome. Below me are broken stones, old walls, and empty arches. Tourists walk past them every day. Many take photos. Few stop to think about what this place once was. 2,000 years ago, this city ruled most of the known world. Rome was not always an empire. It started as a small town on the banks of the Tiber River in Italy. No one at that time would have guessed that this town would one day control lands from Britain to Egypt. The story of Rome begins with a legend. The Romans said their city was founded by two twin brothers, Romulus and Remus. They were said to be raised by a wolf after being left to die as babies. When they grew up, they argued about where to build a city. Romulus killed Remus and founded Rome in 753 BC. That is the story the Romans told. But as a historian, I look at the ground, the ruins, and the old tools found by archaeologists. These show that Rome likely began as a small farming settlement. Simple huts stood on the hills. People grew crops, raised animals, and traded with nearby villages. At first, Rome was ruled by kings. These kings were not always Roman. Some came from a nearby people called the They taught the Romans new skills how to build roads, temples, and strong city walls. But the Romans did not like being ruled by kings forever. Around 509 BC, they drove out their last king. After that, they created something new, a republic. I walk through the Roman Forum, the center of public life in ancient Rome. This was where the republic worked. Here, leaders gave speeches. Here, laws were passed. Here, the people gathered. In the Roman Republic, there was no single king. Instead, power was shared. At the top were two men called consuls. They were elected each year. Their job was to lead the army and run the government. There was also a Senate. The Senate was made up of rich and powerful men. They came from old noble families. They made the big decisions. But Rome was not only made up of rich men. Most people were common citizens. They were farmers, workers, and soldiers. At first, they had little power. Over time, they demanded more rights. This caused many struggles inside Rome. There were protests, strikes, and fights between the rich and the poor. But slowly, the system changed. Common people gained more rights. They could vote. They could hold office. They could have their own leaders. Rome was not a perfect republic. It was still ruled by the wealthy. But it was different from the kingdoms around it. One thing made Rome special: its army. Every Roman citizen was expected to fight when the state called. The army was not just a group of hired soldiers. It was made up of farmers and workers who took up weapons when needed. I traveled to the countryside outside Rome. Here, archaeologists have found old farms and tools. These lands once belonged to Roman citizens. When war came, these men left their farms, fought, and then returned home. This made the Roman army strong. The soldiers were not just fighting for pay. They were fighting for their homes, their land, and their city. Another thing made Rome strong: discipline. Roman soldiers trained hard. They marched long distances. They built camps every night. They followed strict rules. If a soldier disobeyed, he was punished. As I walk along the remains of a Roman road, I see how serious they were. These roads were built straight and strong. They stretched across the empire. Some are still in use today. The roads were not just for trade. They were for the army. Soldiers could move fast from one place to another. If there was trouble in a distant land, Rome could send troops quickly. Rome also had a powerful idea: citizenship. When Rome conquered a place, it did not always destroy it. Sometimes it gave the people a chance to become Roman citizens. This meant they could trade, marry, and travel like Romans. This made many people loyal to Rome. They were not just ruled by Rome. They became part of it. By the time I leave the forum, I understand something simple. Rome was not just strong because of its army. It was strong because of its system, its roads, its laws, and its people. It was a small city with big ambition, and that ambition would soon push it far beyond Italy. I am now standing near the ruins of an old battlefield in southern Italy. Long ago, this land was not Roman. It belonged to other tribes and cities. In the early days, Rome was surrounded by enemies. There were Latin tribes, Samnites, and Greek cities in the south. Rome fought them one by one. These were not easy wars. Sometimes Rome lost badly. Sometimes its armies were destroyed. But Rome had one special habit. It did not give up. When a Roman army was defeated, the city did not surrender. It raised another army, then another, and another. Slowly, Rome began to win. It defeated the Samnites after long and hard wars. It pushed south and fought the Greek cities. One of the most famous enemies of Rome was a Greek king named. He came from Epirus with a strong army and wore elephants. The Romans had never seen elephants in battle before. Pyrrhus defeated the Romans more than once, but each victory cost him many men. After one battle, he said, "Another victory like this, and I am lost." That is where the term Pyrrhic victory comes from, a win that costs too much. In the end, Pyrrhus left Italy. Rome stayed. By around 270 BC, Rome controlled most of the Italian peninsula. But Rome was not done. Across the sea was a powerful city called Carthage. It was in North Africa, in what is now Tunisia. Carthage had a strong navy and rich trade routes. It was one of the richest cities in the ancient world. Rome and Carthage soon became enemies. This led to a long and brutal struggle called the Punic Wars. I traveled to the ruins of Carthage. Today, it is quiet. But once, it was full of life, ships, and trade. The First Punic War was fought mostly at sea. Rome did not have a strong navy at first, but it built one from scratch. It copied enemy ships and trained its men. After years of fighting, Rome won. It took control of the island of Sicily. But the real danger came in the Second Punic War. Carthage had a general named Hannibal. He is still remembered as one of the greatest commanders in history. Instead of attacking Rome by sea, Hannibal did something shocking. He marched his army from Spain, across the mountains, and over the Alps into Italy. He even brought elephants with him. Many of his men died in the cold mountains. But he made it through. 4 years. Hannibal defeated Roman armies again and again. At the Battle of Cannae, He destroyed a huge Roman force. Tens of thousands of Roman soldiers were killed in a single day. I stand on the open fields where Cannae once stood. It is hard to imagine the blood that once soaked this ground. After this defeat, many cities joined Hannibal. It looked like Rome might fall. But once again, Rome refused to surrender. Instead of facing Hannibal directly, Rome attacked Carthage's lands in Spain and Africa. A young Roman general named Scipio led the campaign. Scipio invaded North Africa and forced Hannibal to return home. In 202 BC, they met at the Battle of Zama. This time, Rome won. Carthage was defeated. But Rome did not stop there. In the Third Punic War, Rome attacked Carthage again. This time, it destroyed the city completely. The buildings were burned. The people were killed or sold into slavery. Carthage was gone. Now, Rome had no major rival in the Western Mediterranean. At the same time, Rome moved east. It fought the Greek kingdoms that came after Alexander the Great. One by one, these kingdoms fell. Macedonia was defeated. Greece became part of Rome. Later, Egypt also came under Roman control. I traveled to Athens, to Alexandria, and to the old Roman roads in Turkey. Everywhere, I see signs of Romarchas, roads, theaters, and temples. By the 1st century BC, Rome ruled lands across 3 continents, Europe, Asia, Africa, but as Rome grew, its republic began to crack. The army became loyal to generals instead of the state. Powerful men fought for control. Civil wars broke out. I stand near the ruins of the Roman Senate. This was where Julius Caesar was killed by his own allies. They feared he wanted to become king. But his death did not save the republic. It only led to more war. In the end, Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, defeated all his rivals. He became the first emperor of Rome. He took a new name, Augustus. The Roman Republic was over. The Roman Empire had begun, and at its height, it would rule millions of people across a vast world. I am standing at the edge of an old Roman road in southern France. The stones are still there after 2,000 years. Straight, hard, cold. This road once carried soldiers, carts, and orders from Rome. This is how the empire spread, not just by swords, but by roads, camps, and planning. After Augustus became emperor, Rome entered a long period of growth. The empire was strong. The army was organized. The borders kept moving outward. I traveled north to the Rhine River in Germany. Here, the Romans once tried to push deeper into the forests. The people who lived here were not like the city people of Rome. They were tribal. They lived in small villages. They knew the forests better than any Roman soldier. The Romans wanted to turn this land into a new province. But in the year 09 AD, something went very wrong. 3 Roman legions marched into a forest called Teutoburg. They trusted a local ally, but that ally betrayed them. Germanic warriors attacked from the trees. The Romans could not form their lines. The ground was muddy. The trees were thick. For 3 days, the fighting continued. In the end, the legions were destroyed. Almost every soldier was killed. I walk through the quiet forest today. Birds sing. Wind moves the leaves. It is hard to imagine the screams that once filled this place. After this, Rome stopped trying to conquer deep Germany. The Rhine became a hard border, but in other places, Rome kept expanding. I travel west to Britain. There, I stand beside Hadrian's Wall. It stretches across the land like a long stone scar. This wall was built to keep out northern tribes. It was not just a wall. It had forts, towers, and gates. Soldiers lived here year. Rome invaded Britain in 43 AD under Emperor Claudius. At first, they faced strong resistance. One of the most famous revolts was led by a woman named Bud. She was a queen of a local tribe. After Roman officials mistreated her family, she led a rebellion. Her army burned Roman towns, including London. For a short time, it looked like Rome might lose Britain, but the Roman army regrouped. They crushed the revolt. Boudica either died in battle or took her own life. Rome stayed in Britain for almost 400 years. Next, I travel east to the deserts of the Middle East. Here, Rome faced one of its strongest enemies, the Parthian Empire. The Parthians were not easy to defeat. They had fast horse archers. They attacked, shot arrows, and then rode away. One Roman general, Crassus, tried to conquer them. In 53 BC, he marched into Parthian land. It was a disaster. At the Battle of Carrhae, the Parthian horse archers surrounded the Romans. They shot arrows again and again. The Roman shields could not stop all of them. Crassus was killed. His army was destroyed. Even the mighty Rome had limits. The empire grew strong not only because of conquest, but because of control. Wherever Rome went, it built the same things: roads, forts, baths, theaters, markets. I walk through the ruins of a Roman town in North Africa. The streets are laid out in straight lines. There is a forum, a bathhouse, and a theater. It looks like a small version of Rome itself. This was the Roman method. They did not just conquer land. They changed it. They brought Roman laws, Roman money, Roman language, Roman culture. Many local people adopted Roman ways. They wore Roman clothes. They spoke Latin. They served in the Roman army. Some even became Roman citizens. By the 2nd century AD, the empire reached its largest size. This was during the rule of Emperor Trajan. Rome now controlled Britain in the north, Egypt in the south, Spain in the west, parts of the Middle East in the east. Around 60 million people lived under Roman rule. For many of them, this time was peaceful. This period is often called the Pax Romana, Roman peace. Trade was safe. Roads were secure. Cities were busy and rich. But peace did not last forever. I am now walking through the ruins of an old Roman fort along the Danube River. This was once a busy military post. Now it is silent. The fall of Rome was not one single event. It was slow. It took many years. The problems began inside the empire. First, there were too many bad rulers. After the good emperors died, many weak or cruel men took power. Some became emperor through murder. Some were chosen by the army. Some ruled for only a few months before being killed. This period is often called the crisis of the 3rd century. Between 235 and 284 AD, Rome had over 20 emperors. Most of them died violently. Civil wars broke out again and again. Armies fought each other instead of protecting the borders. While Rome fought itself, enemies attacked from outside. Germanic tribes pushed into Roman lands. In the east, a new Persian empire rose and fought Rome. I traveled to the remains of an old Roman city that was burned during one of these attacks. The walls are broken. The streets are empty. Another problem was money. Rome had grown very large. It needed a huge army to guard its borders. It needed officials to run its cities. All of this cost money. To pay for it, the government raised taxes. It also started making coins with less silver in them. This caused inflation. Prices went up. Money lost its value. Many farmers could not pay their taxes. Some abandoned their lands. Others became tied to large estates owned by the rich. The gap between the rich and the poor grew wider. Then there was the problem of the army. In the early days, Roman soldiers were citizens. They fought for their homes. But later, Rome began to rely more on foreign soldiers. These men were not always loyal to Rome. They were loyal to their commanders or to their pay. Some of these foreign groups were allowed to settle inside the empire. At first, they came as allies. Later, some turned against Rome. One of the most famous of these groups was the Goths. In 376 AD, large numbers of Goths crossed the Danube River into Roman land. They were fleeing another group called the Huns. Rome allowed them to enter, but Roman officials treated them badly. They were cheated, starved, and abused. The Goths rebelled. In 378 AD, they met the Roman army at the Battle of Adrianople. The Roman emperor himself was killed in the fight. The army was destroyed. This was a huge shock. Rome had not suffered such a defeat in centuries. After this, more groups entered Roman lands. Visigoths, Vandals, Franks, some became allies. Some became enemies. In 410 AD, something unthinkable happened. The Visigoths marched into the city of Rome. They looted it for 3 days. Rome had not been sacked in almost 800 years. I stand today near the old gates of the city. Cars pass by. People drink coffee in nearby cafes. But in 410 AD, this place was full of fear. Then, in 455 AD, the Vandals attacked. They sacked Rome again. By this time, the Western Roman Empire was very weak. In 476 AD, the last Western emperor, a young boy named Romulus Augustulus, was removed from power by a Germanic leader. There was no great battle. No final stand. The Western Roman Empire simply ended. The eastern half, ruled from Constantinople, survived. It would later be called the Byzantine Empire. It lasted for nearly another 1,000 years. But the Western Empire, the one that ruled from the city of Rome, was gone. The greatest empire of the ancient world had fallen. I am standing in the ruins of the Roman Forum again. The sun is low. The old columns cast long shadows on the ground. This place was once the heart of an empire. Now it is quiet. When the Western Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, the world did not end. But life changed in many ways. Rome had once controlled a huge area. Its roads connected cities. Its soldiers kept order. Its laws shaped daily life. When the empire collapsed in the West, that system broke apart. In many places, there was no strong government anymore. Roman officials disappeared. Taxes stopped. Armies faded away. Local leaders took control instead. Some were former Roman generals. Some were chiefs of Germanic tribes. These leaders created small kingdoms across former Roman land. In Italy, the Ostrogoths ruled. In Spain, the Visigoths built their own kingdom. In Gaul, the Franks took power. In North Africa, the Vandals ruled for a time. The map of Europe changed. Instead of one large empire, there were many smaller states. I travel through parts of Europe where Roman cities once stood. Some of them shrank. Some were abandoned. Some lost their old buildings and roads. Trade also became weaker. In the Roman days, goods moved across the empire. Grain from Egypt, olive oil from Spain, wine from Italy, silk from the East. But after the fall, many trade routes broke down. Travel became more dangerous. Roads were not repaired as often. People began to live more locally. Many farmers worked only for their own survival. Cities became smaller. This period is often called the early Middle Ages. But not everything from Rome was lost. I walk into an old church built from Roman stones. Here, I see one of the biggest survivors of the empire, the Christian church. By the late Roman Empire, Christianity had spread across the land. Emperors had even made it the official religion. After the fall of the Western Empire, the church remained strong. Bishops and priests became important leaders. They helped the poor. They settled disputes. They kept learning alive. Many ancient books were copied by monks and monks. Without them, much of Roman and Greek knowledge might have been lost. The Latin language also survived. It slowly changed into new languages. French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian. These are called the Romance languages. They are children of Latin. Roman law also lived on. Many European legal systems were based on Roman ideas of justice and rights. Meanwhile, in the East, the Roman Empire was still alive. I traveled to Istanbul, once called Constantinople. This was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. Here, Roman traditions continued. The empire spoke Greek, but it still called itself Roman. This Eastern Empire lasted for nearly 1,000 more years. It fought wars, built churches, and kept old Roman knowledge alive. It finally fell in 1453, when the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople. By then, the world had changed a lot, but the Roman story was not over. I am walking through a busy street in modern Rome. Cars pass by. People talk on phones. Tourists take pictures. But if you look closely, the Roman Empire is still here. Its buildings are still standing. Its ideas still shape our world. I stand in front of the Colosseum. It is broken and worn, but still strong. It reminds people of the power Rome once had. All across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, Roman ruins still exist. Roads, aqueducts, bridges, theaters, forts. Some Roman roads are still in use today. Roman law is also alive. Many modern legal systems are based on Roman law. Ideas like contracts, property rights, and citizenship all come from Rome. I visit a modern court building. Inside, lawyers speak about justice, rights, and law. These ideas would feel familiar to a Roman citizen. Then there is language. English uses many Latin words. So do French, Spanish, and Italian. Medical terms, legal terms, and scientific names often come from Latin. Even the alphabet many people use today comes from the Romans. I look at a calendar on a wall. The months are named January Janus, a Roman god; March Mars, the god of war; July Julius Caesar; August Augustus Caesar. Even the calendar is a Roman gift. Our cities also look Roman in many ways. Romans loved public baths, stadiums, roads, sewers, water systems. Modern cities still follow many of these ideas. I walk across a bridge. Its shape reminds me of Roman arches. Roman engineering ideas are still used today. The idea of a republic also comes from Rome. Many countries today have senates, elections, and written laws. These ideas were part of the Roman Republic long ago. Even the word Senate comes from Rome. As a historian, I have traveled across many lands: Italy, France, Turkey, Egypt, Britain, everywhere. I see traces of Rome. Sometimes it is a broken wall. Sometimes it is a word in a language. Sometimes it is a law in a courtroom. The Roman Empire fell long ago. Its armies are gone. Its emperors are dust. But its ideas, roads, and laws are still alive. Rome is no longer an empire, but in many ways, we still live in its shadow. When you walk down a straight road, when you enter a stadium, when you look at a calendar, or when you speak a word from Latin, you are touching the world that Rome built. The empire fell, but Rome never truly disappeared.